and welcome everybody to another Canine Conversation. I'm so excited this week because I've managed to nab a few moments of time with this wonderful person, Holly Ruddin. I met Holly in the fledgling days of her dog walking and boarding business in Chiswick in West London. So long ago, I hadn't even heard of dog listening yet. Holly's looked after hundreds of dogs since then, maybe even probably thousands. She's expanded her business into a daycare centre, which is absolutely glorious. And if you ever get a chance to follow her on social media, she's a really talented photographer and makes awesome videos of glorious happy dogs. But very excitingly, Holly has recently trained as a canine nutritionist. And that's the bit we're going to pick her brains on today. So welcome, Holly, and thank you so much for joining me this morning. So before I bombard you with all questions from my dog club members, and there's a lot, maybe I can start us off by asking what inspired you to want to become a canine nutritionist?
Well, hi, Ali, and hi, everybody else. Thanks for joining us. So I, as Ali said, I own a dog daycare centre. I'm based in West London. And I started about 12 years ago. I work on a really small scale, which is great for me because I get to work really closely with my dogs and clients alike, which is how I like to run my daycare. The reason why I got into canine nutrition is because I used to have a lovely little miniature schnauzer called Alfie. You can try and get through this without crying because obviously it doesn't end particularly nicely, but yes, so he was really the inspiration through, which I've become a certified canine nutritionist. Alfie was a healthy dog until the age of about 9, at which point he developed urinary tract infections. And he was placed onto a prescription diet, Royal Canine one, which is quite common. Unfortunately, this led to further complications. He had started getting pancreatitis, infections, and unfortunately it led to cancer, and we lost him age 12, which I felt was too young. At the time, I didn't feel like I knew enough about the food that I was putting into his body, and something didn't sit right with me. Why was this dog that was previously healthy getting a lot of yeast infections? His behavior changed, he was depressed. His coat changed, his condition just went downhill. So I thought it's time to learn about canine nutrition. So that's what I did. I started arming myself with a bit more information. I used losing my gorgeous little boy to something, learn something new and exciting. And it was something that I felt like people didn't know about canine nutrition. There wasn't enough information out there. And then 6 months later, a little puppy called Jagger came into my life. And it was just by chance that she rolled into our life and was just gorgeous. And, at 12 weeks old, she was just happy and healthy. But unfortunately, she had a liver shunt issue, which meant that she wasn't as healthy as she should have been. She had to have quite major surgery. And of course, she ended up being put on a prescription diet. By this stage, I decided I wasn't going to put on a prescription diet because I didn't want her to go down the route of being fed cereals and lots of carbohydrates that weren't going to do her body any good. So I switched her to raw. I became a certified canine nutritionist, and we now have a very healthy 2-year-old who I know if she wasn't fed raw wouldn't be as healthy as she is. And she's a happy little girl, and we couldn't wish for any better. And that is because we learned about canine nutrition and making sure she has everything that she needs to be healthy and happy forever, hopefully.
Wow, that's quite something. So really you've had quite traumatic events that have kind of inspired you to delve into it yourself, because you obviously were finding that the help that you needed wasn't coming to you from anywhere else.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate. And I guess I'm lucky that my vet is amazing. I mean, he's one of the best vets. We really searched for a vet that was, could really help us. Unfortunately, vets aren't canine nutritionists quite often. They haven't studied it. So some of the advice I'm sure that you've heard by vets isn't necessarily right. Like I wouldn't go to a GP for brain surgery. You shouldn't go to your vet for canine nutrition advice because they're not necessarily going to be up to date. And it's a really interesting world, the nutrition world, because it's changing so quickly. And you have to be up to date with everything because processes, studies are coming out that are really fascinating. And unless you go to somebody who's qualified, they're not necessarily going to give you the right advice. And that's where I fell down with Alfie, because I wasn't given the right advice. And I'm fairly sure, had I known what I know now, he wouldn't have gone down, the route of, dying from a brain tumor, which is exactly what happened. So there's a guilt and there's a sadness inside me, but we have to turn these things into something good. And that's why Jagger's taught me so much, and made sure that I when we first got her and she was so poorly, the first thing I felt was, why did we've just lost this dog. And I was going to the vet every week with her. She was on the same medication Alfie was on. I mean, it was so similar, but it was like somebody had sent this, and I'm not being all godly, but somebody had sent me this puppy for a reason, which I think is, quite.
You can talk about that with me, Holly. That's all right up my street. Yeah, definitely. I think he was sent to us by our old Kenny. That's another conversation. We'll do another Zoom on that.
Interesting. We find with Jagger, even the mannerisms. So Alfie, like things I've never taught her, she will come and put her paw on me, and I think, it's amazing.
I love it.
It's really special.
I love it. Love it.
Well,
there are definitely people listening to this that will also recognise that kind of thing. Very interesting about what you were saying about vets are wonderful.
Wonderful, yeah.
But they don't study nutrition. I found that I would have almost the same thing to say, but put canine behaviour in place of canine nutrition, because they don't study canine behaviour either. So yeah, let's use the specialists where we can.
And it's a real shame with the Veterinary Act, they're not allowed to recommend complementary or alternative therapies until they've tried the traditional methods. So, for example, you take your dog to the vet with a yeast problem, you'll have a secondary infection, for example, and they'll treat with antibiotics or steroids, rather than saying, come on, look at the diet. They should go hand in hand, these things. And by that point,
absolutely,
dog antibiotics and steroids, and you've messed up all their microbiome, and then you've taken a step back. So yeah, we should be, and that's where my vet's great, because he'll go to different people for different advice, and that's what you need from a vet. I think is important.
That's brilliant. And can I ask just one more thing before I get into the questions from the dog club members? I quite often say that the main factor in dog behavioural problems is us, is the people that the dogs live with and the environment in which the dogs live. But very close to that is their health and wellness and their nutrition. I think that is a huge factor in behaviour. Would you go along with that? Is that something that you've seen?
Yes. And I would say they do work hand in hand. I mean, you can't have a happy and healthy dog that's going to respond to any training unless you've looked after their whole body, looking after their gut, making sure they're happy and healthy and feeling good. So yes, absolutely. But similarly, if you've got a dog that's stressed, full of anxiety, that's not going to help their body. So they really work together. It's really important. That's knowledge.
Okay. Wonderful. Thank you, Holly. Right. So shall I dive into some questions?
Yes. Looking forward to these.
So I'm going to start with a question from Karen. Karen says, I would love to know how important protein is for dogs. I've been told that my dogs should have mostly carbs with a quarter protein and a quarter veg. But I didn't agree with this person, and my dogs are now fine on 70-30 protein veg, which obviously includes some carbs. What would you say to that?
Right, yes. Well done, Karen, for realising that information is incorrect. We know. I mean, I think we're going back to what we've just said about, making sure that you speak to the right professional. When you're dealing with food, I would speak to a canine nutritionist. Great as your vet sounds, I'm sure he's brilliant, or she. Now, dogs are carnivores, and we know they're carnivores because of their jaw shape. They've got these canines that are for tearing meat. We've got these molars that are for crunching bone. We know they should be eating a high protein diet because their digestive system is designed to be to utilize everything in that meat. So it's a very acidic stomach, and it's a short digestive tract as well. Ours is very long because we have to digest, we're digesting all sorts of other stuff like vegetables. So with dogs, it's really important they have a high protein diet because they need the amino acids from the protein to be able to function. So with protein, it helps with building muscle, repairing tissues, carrying oxygen in the blood, enzyme production, immune responses. All these things are controlled through protein. It's vital that they have a high protein diet. And of course, it also matters where you get your protein from. It has to be high quality, fresh meat. So if we're looking at kibble, which I have a feeling we might go down the route of talking about, kibble's overprocessed. I mean, there's no two ways about it. You're killing all those enzymes that the body needs to actually function. So as soon as you start going down the route of kibble, you're providing a diet that isn't going to give the dog what they need. So kibble's very high in carbohydrate, puts stress on the body constantly. And you're stressing those organs. So the dog's never going to be able to perform as well as a dog that's fed a high protein, fresh diet. Simple as that.
Interesting. Thank you for that, Holly. Okay. So I'm going to go
to add on.
Yeah, go on.
Well, Karen, I think she said 70% and 30%. Was that right? So 30%.
She did. Yeah.
Whatever works for your dog. I mean, I feed 10% veg with my dogs, but I've got yeasty dogs. So I've just had to cut down a little bit there. I'm a little bit careful with them just because obviously Jagger's recovering from her liver shunt surgery. So we're still like a little bit, we make sure that she gets a bit more protein, a bit more meat, basically. So, yeah.
Okay, that's actually quite interesting because I think Lorraine's question might be really relevant here then because of the surgery issues that Jagger's had. Lorraine's dog has had a particular issue. It's not the same, but she says, my dog's had a particular issue in that she lost some of her intestines when her spaying up went badly wrong. I'm not sure that this is the only issue, as the vet said she has a protein losing deficiency. So, i.e. her body does not absorb protein and also she has pancreatitis. I'm not sure of the relationship with this, but her albumin levels are consistently just below normal. Consequently, we've been battling liquid poos ever since, and this has been 2.5 years. Currently, we're feeding Hill's ID on vet's advice. Initially, it did seem to improve her poos. We begin to see the odd soft turd, but it's now going backwards. And I've just approached Tails.com, who tailor-make their food parcels to your dog. Their nutritionist has just made a recommendation, which I'm considering. Raw is not an option, as the vet says Flo would not cope with the bacteria present in the meat, which, if she was healthy, she would. Flo is on a daily procholine sachet and vitamin B tablets. So I guess the questions Lorraine has are, is Hill's ID a valuable food above others in the marketplace? It is expensive. Lorraine wouldn't mind that if she felt it was effective.
Right. There's a lot in that, isn't there? I mean,
unravel that.
Yes, unravel that. I mean, obviously, because Lorraine's dog is under the care of a vet, everything that I say needs to be checked by a vet. I have to say that first of all. But in terms of, I mean, it's a really interesting one for me because I'd really like to, does Lorraine say whether the dog suffered with pancreatitis before the dog was switched?
She doesn't say that actually. Her body does not absorb protein and also she has pancreatitis, so I don't know.
Right. I mean, as far as going to raw, I mean, to me, this shouts leaky gut syndrome to me. I think the microbiome in that dog's gut's probably shot because of the fact that I would assume the dog would have been on some sort of steroids or antibiotics at some point. So the first thing this dog needs is its microbiome to be replenished. So probiotics. What was it was procholine.
She's using procholine, okay, which I think is a probiotic.
It's a good one, but I would maybe just mix it up a little bit. So there's a really good one called Phytospore, and it's by a company called, hang on a second, Microbiome Labs. And it's a really good one. So what I tend to use is after surgery or antibiotics, that's my go-to. And it's pricey.
Nice.
That's the only thing with that one. So long term, it's not something that you'd probably want to be doing. I think it works out about 50p a pill. So, and that's daily. So it kind of adds
Ouch.
up. Yeah, ouch, big ouch. But shop around, because Amazon, it's really expensive. So have a little look. So I'd switch to something like long term. There's one called four leaf rover, and it's called Protect. And that's a soil-based probiotic. So the soil-based ones are really good because there's a protective coat on it. So it gets into the digestive tract before it starts being destroyed. So what you need to do is, first of all, get the dog off hills. I mean, it's full of stuff that if you can't pronounce the names in that diet, the dog should not be on it. And if you don't know what's in it, I mean, the list is just endless. So I totally think that, is it Sue? Sorry, what's her?
This is Lorraine.
Lorraine.
And yeah, she's questioning the Hills ID, and she's spoken to tails.com.
Okay. So with Alfie, my dog, who was put onto a prescription diet, he was on Royal Canin. He didn't suffer from pancreatitis at all until he was switched to that. Now, a lot of vets will tell you that it's to do with fat levels, and that's what causes pancreatitis. But you also need to look at carbohydrates. So every time you're feeding a dog carbohydrates, which they don't need, they get their energy from fats and protein. So carbohydrates are not needed in a dog's diet. Okay, that's the first thing. It's really important. So every time you feed a dog a diet that's high in carbohydrates, whether it be a prescription diet or just your normal kibble, that's going into the gut, and it's causing stress on the pancreas. So the pancreas, what it does is it releases enzymes that break down food. Now, if that's constantly in stress, you're causing damage to the pancreas, basically. So I would cut out all carbohydrates, stick to a low-fat diet. That's also important. But I would be really inclined to look at either a home-cooked diet or a fresh cooked diet, because I think the vet probably is right that at the moment the dog is immune compromised, so you don't want to be feeding something that could potentially have some sort of pathogens in. We can get onto that next, because raw feeding, vets don't like it because of salmonella and stuff like that, but we can talk about that next. So I would go for a home cooked food. Now, there are some on the market that are really good. I would avoid butternut box. It's too high in lentils. We have this thing called lentil poo, which is basically butternut box, just comes out like lentils. We don't need those, and it causes inflammation. There's one called Different Dog, which is worth looking at. So it's home cooked. It comes to your door frozen. So you need some freezer space, but it's a really good option. The meats are really good. They're really good quality, and the veg content can be a little bit high, but I think in your case that's absolutely fine to start with. So I'd start with that. And also what you want to be doing is choosing vegetables that are going to be, you don't want to be going for any carbohydrates that are going to feed any bad bacteria in that gut. So you want to be promoting good gut health. So you've got your probiotics you're going to start adding in, but you also want to be adding in vegetables that are high in fiber, because good bacteria likes fiber. Bad bacteria likes carbohydrates and sugars. Okay, so you're going to be feeding things like cruciferous vegetables, your broccolis, your kales, your cabbage, your where else are we going? Anything green, basically, you can feed, but you need to cook it. A lot of people
would cook it.
Yeah, always cook it, because dogs don't have amylase in their mouth, so they can't actually break down anything. So you need to cook it, and you need to blitz it. And what I tend to do for my dogs is I will cook up a batch I choose 4 of those cruciferous ones. You can stick in some cauliflower as well. And I batch cook every month, and then steam it or boil it, whatever you want to do. Steam's probably better. And then stick it in your blender, whiz it up, put it into baby pots and freeze it. And then a tablespoon of your dog's food every day. If you're feeding kibble, feed this alongside it, because all that fiber is going to be great for that good gut bacteria.
Oh, lovely.
So that's a really good one. So you need to be thinking prebiotics. So your prebiotics is your fiber. So whether you use a powdered version, there's one by Proflax called Tummy-tastic, which is a good one. So that's got pro and pre in it. So I would, in this case, for this dog, definitely call a company like Different Dog, because they will have a canine nutritionist that works with them. So they can go through all your notes, make sure that they're happy. They can work alongside your vet. And that's why these companies are so good, because people buy from dog food companies that they like, and their customer service, I have to say, in the dog industry, especially these raw food companies, are absolutely insane. They're so good. You can call them, and they've got vets on hand which will talk you through it, and they're pro raw or home cooked food. And that's amazing. That's a really good resource you should all be using.
Yeah,
So
definitely. I second that. We use honeys, and they were, when we were struggling with him, they were brilliant. And they weren't just about you must buy our raw product, but they were
yeah,
very much questioning it for him. I
yeah,
was really impressed with their kind of neutrality.
yeah.
Yeah,
It's amazing, isn't it? And I think that's
really
where
good.
it's great to work with these smaller companies, because you have to bear in mind, Hills is owned by Nestle. Do you know what I mean? You're never gonna, these companies, you know, and I don't want to, can I talk about Butternut Box? I don't really want to, you know, I don't want to slate any companies, but as soon,
Probably not, because I'm going to put this on YouTube.
oh, okay. Cut that down.
So we'll do that on another day.
Yeah. But just be careful
Okay.
about what the companies, where they're going in terms of if they're looking for extra money or if they're looking for dog health. You know, what's their interest, you know,
Yeah.
check what's
Yeah.
in your dog food. The information is there. You know, you just need to make sure that things aren't being put in that you don't think your dog will benefit, i.e. lentils. That's I won't say anything else.
And and so Lorraine could look at home cooked rather than raw, go
Yeah.
fresh cooked. Okay,
I would
that could be
go,
really
yeah.
interesting for her.
I would go down that route.
Right.
The other option is, Poppy's
It's all right.
Kitchen. They've switched. So you don't want to ever cook raw dog food because of the bone content in it. So if it's an 80,
Yeah.
10, 10, you don't want to cook it because that bone's going to splinter. However, Poppies have switched to eggshells. So they're getting their, I mean, you can debate whether there's enough phosphorus coming from that eggshell that you would get from bones. I think they probably supplement it with something else. That's how I sort of assume they get around that.
Oh,
But
that's really interesting. So you can cook it.
you can cook it. So if Lorraine wanted to go down that route where she eventually wanted to go to raw, I don't know what her stance is on it, then she could start cooking it, and then slowly, as the dog's microbiome increases and gets better, you're going to get rid of those, you know, poos that are basically quite soft, and then you can decrease that. But going back to that, I would also encourage her to add some bone broth into the dog's diet. So leaky,
lovely.
yeah. So once digestive tract, so we're talking about this, the lining of the digestive system it has lots of villi on it, which holds serotonin. So all your happy hormones are in there as well. So it's 95% of dogs' serotonin is stored in that gut. So if it's not looked after, i.e. if you're feeding a high carb diet like the Hills diet, then that's going to die off and you start to get cracks in the actual lining of the digestive system. And then what you do is you get food leaking into the blood system, and you've ended up with a dog which has got leaky gut. So if you introduce, and that's where the runny poos are coming from. So I suspect this dog is suffering from that. But either way, you treat it in the same way. So you're improving the gut health of the dog. And then if you add in bone broth, the gelatin from that can actually plug the holes. So that's going to really help as well. It's a really good thing, bone broth.
Brilliant. Lovely. Thank you for that. Right. I'm going to go to Claire. Claire's question is multi-dog. So Claire's question is, I feed all three of my dogs Eden Original Cuisine medium kibble with a sixth of a tray of Wainwright's Complete Adult Mature Wet Food, turkey, lamb or chicken, twice a day. She's just detailing the different dogs, their ages, their weights, but I'm going to just skip through that and ask the question. The question is, am I feeding them what they individually need? The reason I went for Eden Kibble was that it was suitable from puppy through to mature, saved me buying multi-packs. The boys eat anything, wolf it down. Misty tends to pick her way through, but finishes. So what she's saying, she's got different age. Collie Retriever's the oldest, then you've got Black Lab 6, then you've got Boxer 3. 20 kg, 30 kg, 30 kg. And she's wondering whether what she's doing is meeting their needs.
And are they healthy?
I think so.
No issues at all, no.
Not that she's saying.
I mean, with a question like this, it's quite, you know, I always say, look at the dog. Every dog is different.
Sorry, Holly, her oldest is on a daily dose of Loxicom and green-lipped mussel supplement for muscle wastage.
Okay, yeah. So in that case, I mean, in an ideal world, so with Eden, is Eden grain-free? Is that a grain-free one?
I have a feeling it's grain-free.
Yeah, okay. And Wainwright, I don't think it is grain-free, that wet one. I mean, look at your dogs. Are they happy and healthy? Then it's, I mean, without criticizing the food, whether you want to go with, I will always recommend a raw or a home cooked diet, just because it's very difficult to get everything a dog needs from a processed diet, which is what both these things are. Now, if you want to stick with convenience, which it sounds like it could be, then maybe add in some extras. So add in the veg that we were talking about, add some more omegas in. So quite often with these sort of commercial diets, the omega-6 and omega-3 is slightly out of balance. So omega-6 causes inflammation, omega-3 reduces it. And you want a 4-to-1 ratio. Now, quite a few of these companies, you're looking at about a 20-to-1 ratio, which is way off, and it will cause inflammation. So you could up your omega-3s, that's one way of doing it, and seeing if that might help the dog that's on Loxicon. Again,
how does she do that?
Oh, right, good question. So fish, eggs, everything like that. So I do frozen sprats. The key to good nutrition is varied diet. So mix it up, have some fun. Don't get too stressed by it, but just have some fun with your dogs. I mean, I feed frozen sprats. We do. The good thing is to feed young fish. That's what you sort of, because the older the fish, the higher the mercury content. And if you've got mercury in your dogs, so just be a bit careful with that. But if you're raw feeding your dogs, just buy a bag of sprats from the company, Paleo Ridge, Natural Instinct, they all do them. So that's one way of doing it. But
that's brilliant.
Yeah, so I don't want to say change your dog's diet unless you want to, and we can talk about that, absolutely. But I would mix it up a little bit and put some different, if your dog's suffering from muscle wastage and is getting on a bit in years, was that right? It was.
Yeah, she's 14 and a half.
Yeah, well,
Holly Retriever.
I mean, what an amazing age.
That's great age.
Yeah, absolutely. But also, again, with omega-3s, brain health, that's going to help an older dog as well. So up those, I would say.
Brilliant.
Whole eggs, quail eggs with shell on. Good fun. Video it. We like to see those videos.
Oh, I love that. I love that answer, Holly, because she's now gets the choice. They've obviously got to a place with their, their varied dogs, their very varied ages. I know that there's a busy life with Claire, so she's obviously got to a place where it's okay, and you've given her some ideas to improve it. Yeah, I love that.
I think so, and I think you have to be careful, because I don't want to be speaking about raw food constantly to people, because some people, it just doesn't fit their lifestyles. Some people don't have freezer space, or X, Y, Z. And I prefer people actually question what they feed their dogs, like Claire's done, and then we can sort of add some bits and pieces in just to help a little bit. But again, probiotics, please, always good. Improve gut health, great for everyone.
Great.
As well.
Okay, so I'm going to scoot over to Sue's questions here. Sue's gone like a little machine gun. She's gone, what about this and this and this? So let's see how many we can get through.
I'm ready.
Lovely. Okay. So yeast overproduction. What foods cause this, and what foods are good for keeping it in balance?
Okay, so we've already said with yeast. I mean, yeast is, as a daycare centre owner, it is the most common issue that I deal with. I'd say I have about 160 dogs on my books. About 80% of those are kibble fed, and most of them would have some sort of kibble yeast issue. Now, yeast isn't always from food. It's really important that we talk about this, I think, because it's environmental as well. It's also to do with vaccinations. Yeast likes heavy metals. I don't want to go into vaccinations too much. I personally try to test my dogs, but that's my preference. And flea treatment, worm treatment, I am very careful with that. I wouldn't put knit lotion on my child's hair if they didn't have nits. Same with my dogs. My dogs have been around dogs their whole life. I've never seen a flea on any of my dogs. Worm counts, really important to worm count your dog. There has been the odd worm, pop up every so often, but it's so easy to do. Are you worm counting, Ali?
I do, yeah. Shall I just explain worm count? So this is the way we do it. Every 3 months to 6 months, we order a little pack. They send us through this little sample kit, and we take a sample of poop and we send it back to worm count. It's not that expensive. It's like 25 quid a dog, something like that. And they tell us whether they've got worms or parasites. And the only thing that's ever come up for us, and that's including old Kenny, chili, so for years, and then New Ludo is something that he came with. I think he came with Giardia. So that's the thing that they've told us about. Nothing else. And I don't deworm them until they've got something. So,
We had
so
one.
love worm count.
It's brilliant. It works out cheaper than all those chemicals that they're putting on my dogs. We were reading Bravecto. We were reading they have a list of all the ingredients, and one of them, it said, do not ingest, do not touch in case of anaphylaxis, shock. I mean, the list was just endless of why you wouldn't want it in your house, basically. So why would we be giving it to our dogs? I mean, it's a bit. But we had one.
So that's interesting. You're finding that there's a relationship between chemicals and yeast.
Yes.
I'm not sure I'd put that together, actually.
Yeah. So the heavy metals in that will attract straight to that, and also you're damaging the dog's microbiome again. So as soon as that happens, you've got. So we had a hookworm incident. My dog is around other dogs, so we did have a hookworm incident, and that was after 3 months. So I tend to do it every 3 months in the winter, every month in the summer, just because my dogs are around a lot of other dogs.
Yeah.
So we actually had to use Provenox on Jagger, and she had a massive yeast outbreak where she ended up with almost awful dermatitis on her ears, and her hair fell out, and that was straight away after using that. So having never had anything, it was chalk and cheese. I mean, you could see the difference was quite amazing. So
okay,
careful, everyone, is what I say.
So it's not always food. That's a really interesting question then, Sue. Thanks for asking that.
Sorry, and I haven't got. So also water. So you need to filter your water and be careful about anything chemicals being sprayed around the house. Sorry, lots of different stuff. Do you want me to
God.
Yeah. I know a lot about yeast. The thing with yeast is it's everywhere all the time, and it's waiting for an environment where it can multiply. And the best thing you can do with yeast is provide a situation where you can get all the good bacteria up. So going back to what we were saying about feeding a high starch, a low carbohydrate sugar diet, and then you up your fiber diet. So even with fruits, be careful. Apple and pears, I know for Jagger, that will set her off again. So I go for fruits that are like berries, sort of things like that, are much better. So just creating an environment that is hostile to that yeasty bacteria, all those bad stuff, and then you create a nice environment for the good ones. That's the best way to do it.
I love it. Brilliant. Number 2. Joint supplements. Are these necessary to add from an early age, or are there food types that support good joint health without need for supplements?
Does Sue raw feed out of interest? Do you know what she?
She was last time I spoke to her.
Okay, cool. So I mean, raw feeding straight away. It's a low inflammatory diet, so you're pretty much there already. Joint supplements, I like to get all of my nutrition I want from natural sources, because the bioavailability for a dog's going to be much better. So things like sprats, sardines, that sort of thing, frozen mussels. You can use green lip mussel powders, all sorts, but I'd always go with that and see how you get on first. But yeah, keeping the diet fresh, no carbohydrates, right down to treats. Don't be giving, all these, little gravy bones, things like that. Avoid that sort of thing as far as I'm concerned. There's some really good dehydrated treats out there, and I think towards that rather than, causing any issues there.
Great. Talking about vegetables, Sue also asks, is it okay to add vegetables to each meal? She mentions broccoli, red peppers, green beans. Yes. Or should it be more limited?
Well, I mean, I do. This is the thing. There's, as with nutrition, as with dogs in general, there's so much debate about everything. Everybody's got an idea. I personally think, there's two models that we can go with. There's the prey raw model, which is where somebody believes that they wouldn't eat vegetables in the wild, so we wouldn't give them any vegetables. They don't need it. But dogs can digest some vegetables. You just have to be quite careful. I personally feel, dogs, great thing about dogs is they can actually synthesize their own vitamin C where we can't, but you can give them a bit of a boost. There's no harm in giving them vegetables as long as you're careful with what you're giving them. So like I said before, I'm careful with Jagger. She doesn't get sweet potato, any potatoes at all, carrots, lots of sugars there. you're creating an environment for yeast again. So I'm quite careful with that. So yeah, but by all means, as long as they're cooked and chopped up, go for it. Just watch those runny poo, giving too much, basically.
If a dog has a sensitive stomach, i.e. during antibiotics use, what's the best food to support their digestion? Vets say chicken and rice, but it's not natural for dogs to eat grains.
Yes, so I hear this all the time, and I totally agree with it. Yeah, brilliant. I mean, you need to cut out grains completely. Don't do rice. And actually, years ago with Alfie, I used to give him chicken and rice and be like, well, why? It was making him worse. And it was that rice was causing more inflammation in the gut. It makes sense, completely makes sense. So I tend to go for canned pumpkin or fresh pumpkin is a good one. Moisture content's really high, it's about 98% moisture. So that can kind of bind them as well. It's got pectin in it, so it binds the stomach. So white fish, chicken, boiled, or, you know, don't fry it or anything. But that's what I go for. But everybody's got their own, you know, little tricks up their sleeve. I use psyllium husk is quite a good one. That's my sort of favorite.
Oh yeah.
And procola, the paste is quite good. But there's always everybody's got a war trough that they go to, don't they? These good ones.
Absolutely.
As with everything else.
I don't need to really ask you this, but one of Sue's questions is a raw food diet the best nutrition for dogs?
Yes, Sue. Yes.
She also says, I give my pup natural yogurt at night time. What is the optimum amount, and is every day okay for him to have it?
Yes, I mean, again, how's your dog? Is your dog happy, enjoying it? I mean, there's no harm in it. I don't tend to give cow products to my dogs just because the lactose in it is a bit high. I tend to, if I was going with that, I'd go for goat. There's some color. In fact, the lady who had the dog with pancreatitis issues, another who was, I've forgotten her name.
Sorry.
Lorraine. I would perhaps, goat colostrum is quite a good one. That's another one. So that's like something that is a bit more digestible for a dog. People tend to go towards goat milk and yogurt a bit more. But I mean, so if your dog's enjoying it, who am I to say no to it? A couple of tablespoons, it's not going to do any harm.
Sue, something's just popped into my head actually, because I know he's had a little bout of kennel cough. I would also avoid dairy for kennel cough and snotty noses and things like that, just because it can be a bit, it can irritate and encourage allergies and sneezing and coughs and things like that. So maybe have so that's just popped into my head. Hopefully
Manuka honey,
recovered from...
In which case, Manuka honey. Yeah. Brilliant.
Manuka honey. And I've also used a little bit of raw garlic if the dog can tolerate it. She's really good with raw garlic. He's not. So if they can tolerate it, that's what I go for anything like that. Hemp oil is good for inflammation. Are there any foods that help with such conditions? Oh, hang on. Hemp oil is good for inflammation. Are there any other foods that help with such conditions? Sue, you haven't mentioned a condition unless I've read that incorrectly. What do you think of hemp oil, Holly?
I haven't used it myself, but I've heard really great things. I've got a dog that uses it at daycare at the moment with good results. I mean, anything, I assume inflammation, joints, we're going down that route?
That's probably,
So absolutely. Again, diet, you know, making sure that your microbiome's looked after. You've got all those microbes that are going around in that gut and they're looking for T cells, which are going to help with inflammation. So yes, always back to the gut.
Okay. Number 8, Sue's final question. My dog has reverse sneezing, I think, through allergies. Is there any special diet or supplements I can give to him to ease the summer allergies?
Yes, actually, this is a good one.
So would the yogurt, avoiding the yogurt for a period of time maybe be a good idea?
I ditched the yogurt. Try something else. Try bone broth. Make some bone broth in your pressure cooker. Honestly, it fixes everything, and it's so easy to make. I mean, couple of hours in a pressure cooker, done.
Yeah. And would you put in, because so I used to use bone broth for me, and I would put in onions and garlic. Would you keep onions and garlic out of bone broth for dogs?
I would do. I'm a bit funny with garlic. I do use it on my
Yeah, I
own,
know.
but I don't tend to recommend it because you get the dose wrong, you've got a problem. And I know it's, I think it works out. I think it's a clove per kilogram. If you go over that, you've got an issue. Does that sound about right?
A clove per kilogram of dog?
Yeah, if you go over that, then you've ended up with a poisoning, basically. So for
Oh,
me,
I would go really minuscule.
yeah,
That sounds like
no,
quite a
that's
lot
what
to
I mean.
me.
I wouldn't give
Yeah.
what I mean is that's what's going to end up with a poisoning incident. So yeah, I mean, I personally don't recommend it to people just because I'd worry that you could get, because it is part of the allium family, onions, you know, you're sort of opening up a bit of a.
And so your bone broth is just the bones?
Yeah, so I would use a lot of like joints, feet, that sort of thing. Make sure you're getting your meat from proper places, so grass-fed beef, because a lot of, you know, all these like antibiotics that they're giving to the animals end up in their bone marrow. So make sure you're getting it from a good place. And then I literally just stick it in with water and some apple cider vinegar, really plain, fill it up, lid on, 6 hours, done. And you've got this
6 hours, wow, brilliant.
Yeah, I mean, you can do it for 3 hours, but I'm quite competitive about how jelly it gets. So, I know, I've got a bit obsessive with bone broth, and then you freeze it into just ice cube tray, freeze it into the little pots, and then pop one out every day. And the dogs love it. Brilliant. So that's a good one. Going back to the allergies, we had a massive allergic reaction, poor little Jagger, to a furry caterpillar in the garden a few days ago. Oh. Yeah, massive welts all over her. So I know, poor little thing. We use quercetin. I don't know if you've heard about that one. It's a good one.
I certainly have, yeah.
It's amazing, and it's sorted her out.
In what form do you give that to her?
It just comes in a capsule. So I'm actually giving it to her on a daily basis. She's an itchy dog. She's, you know, there's only so much you can do with diet before, you know, you have to accept that sometimes environmental allergies are going to take over. And this time of year, she's an itchy dog. But we've got on top of it with quercetin and bromelain. So you need the bromelain, which is from pineapples. The quercetin is going to be from your red onions, your cherries, your dark fruits, basically. Obviously, don't give your dog onions. But yeah, it comes in a capsule. You can buy it from Amazon. I think it's about, check the dosage, but I think we give about 125 milligrams a day. And that seems to keep all the itching at bay, which is lovely. So
wow.
You can avoid these apple
that's good. So reverse sneezing could be an allergic reaction? Could
be. Has the dog got any other symptoms? Do we know? Any itching? Nothing?
Only that.
Do. And it could be.
Yeah, some dogs do.
The end of the kennel, was Sue the one with the kennel cough, the dog?
Yeah, so I'm pretty sure Sue, it was kennel cough that Sue mentioned last time we spoke. So I'll catch up with her about that.
It might be worth just, if it's a new thing, check, because of grass seeds, they're around at the moment. I've had a few dogs with them up their noses and paws and stuff. So if it's new, always check with your vet.
Okay, wonderful, Holly. Thank you. I'm just going to check through whether there's anything else. This is a good question, actually, from Lorraine. How can one evaluate different foods other than by trial and error?
That's a good one. Look at the ingredients massively. Like we said, if you don't know what the ingredient is, if it's got a long name, don't feed it to your dog. If you have to Google it, don't feed it to your dog. You're really looking for a good protein source. A lot of the ones that we were looking at, Bakers, I was looking at yesterday, it's 40% cereal. If meat isn't your first list of ingredient, get rid of it. If it says animal derivatives, get rid of it, because what is animal derivatives? It's the worst part of the meat. You know, we don't even know, it doesn't even list what it is. So you're going for protein first, and you know, a good quality protein. Like we can't live off cereal, dogs shouldn't live off kibble. It's the same thing. You can't expect a dog to go on forever. And I think the thing that really gets, because you get the odd person who says, well, my dog lived till at 17 and it was fed pedigree chum every day. You don't know as much as we think these dogs are communicating, how happy are they? You know, how are they feeling in themselves? Give them a good chance, because that's what we have to do as guardians for our dogs, is give them a good chance. And I'll tell you what, if you lose a dog because you fed it the wrong food, it's the worst thing. You know, make sure that you give them every chance.
I love it. Holly, thank you. I think we've done all our questions. So I'm going to finish up by asking you to just say how people can get in touch with you if they would like to know more. How do you work? It's a consultancy practice
Yeah.
that you've set up, isn't it?
Yeah, so I'm kind of hoping that I can help people to get through all the marketing. There's a lot of jargon out there, and sort of sift through it and find the good companies that can really help the dog, make them feel really good. You know, diet is all about making your dog feel really good, and also building your bond with your dog. If you're feeding your dog a good diet, I tell you what, your relationship with your dog will go through the roof. We have so much fun at meal times here. It's just, you know, it feels so much better to feed a fresh diet to your dog than feeding kibble. So I work through Zoom or online through emails. My company is HR Canine Consultancy. So you can either email me or you can find my website that way. So my email address is info@hrcanineconsultancy.co.uk.
Lovely, and I'll make sure I detail that on whenever I use this video. I can put those details in the comments, etc. That's wonderful, Holly. Thank you so much. I'm going to say mega thank you to you, and also to, in the memory of wonderful Alfie, who I had the pleasure of meeting. And to your other two inspirational dogs as well that you still have with you, because they've, you know, been helping you find this next rung on your journey. So thank you to all of you, and I'll speak to you very soon.
Thanks, Ali. Take care. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.